I've been waiting to do this video for a while, and now I have the perfect opportunity, as Onision has just recently put out a video giving his dumbass excuses why he's not vegan. He's just vegetarian, and I don't think he should even be able to call himself vegetarian, as dairy and eggs aren't vegetables. They're also not healthy or ethical, but his best excuse to eat them is...
Why does Onision identify as a vegetarian instead of a vegan? Vegan is defined as a person who does not eat or use animal products. To give you a realistic real-world understanding of what veganism is actually all about, let me show you a restaurant menu. It's a chicken and sausage quesadilla. The only thing vegetarians really need to do to eat this is have them remove the meat. Meanwhile, a vegan has to say, no chicken, no sausage, no cheese, and no ranch dressing on the side. Point being, vegetarianism is pretty goddamn easy, and doesn't require you change a whole lot about your diet other than simply removing meat.
So your first argument for consuming bovine mammary secretions, chicken periods, and supporting the suffering and death of animals is convenience. Poor you having to go to specialty restaurants to choose from vegan options. This is especially hypocritical coming from you, as you've said in the past.
What are you doing, White?
I'm eating veal.
Veal, as in a newborn baby animal?
Yeah, so?
Oh, so you just have no soul at all then?
What? I have a soul.
You could have eaten a number of things and you chose a baby?
I made meat.
If that were true and you really cared and you actually believed what you just said, you would only eat the bare minimum. Adults at that. Adult animals only.
Okay, so I chose to eat a baby because it tastes good.
You sound like a sociopath.
Where do you think veal comes from? The dairy industry. In order for cows to produce milk, they have to be pregnant, and dairy farmers forcibly impregnate cows, as in rape them, and then once they give birth, their children are ripped away from them, put into the veal industry where they're tortured and murdered. Funny how you criticize people who eat veal, yet you are supporting the veal industry by eating and promoting dairy products. And your only excuse is convenience? Is convenience the main reason you get other people to have sex with your wife? I still don't think you understand the cruelty and death that goes on into these vegetarian food products you like to eat. This is footage I took with my drone at a slaughterhouse in Toronto, and all of those heads and guts you see are from dairy cows, and their heads are often marked in blue to identify them as having high risk of diseases like mad cow, so that they can be incinerated rather than be rendered for food consumption. This is the cost of your convenience. Do you still think it's worth it?
Oh my god, fucking teeth. Oh, fuck. Okay.
And you also consume eggs. In case you didn't already know, male chicks are useless to egg production, and so once they're born, they're either gassed, thrown out into the trash and left to die, or ground up alive, and female hens have to suffer from horrible abuse and neglect up until the point they're killed once they can no longer produce eggs at a rate that's profitable to the industry. You criticize meat eaters for committing unnecessary acts of cruelty, but you're doing the exact same thing, and there's no justifiable reason for it. Eggs and dairy are not healthy for you. They both contain saturated fat and cholesterol, which causes heart disease and diabetes, and dairy consumption is even associated with bone weakness and an increased risk of all-cause mortality. There is no personal benefit to consuming these products, and you're just committing unnecessary cruelty.
As you may or may not know, Onision grew up on somewhat of a farm and raised his own chickens. He consumed the eggs that those chickens produced, and he saw that they could be humanely treated in the process. But apparently eggs can be very bad for you considering how much cholesterol they have. Allegedly, they have as much cholesterol as a cheeseburger. So congratulations, Fax. You sort of ruined eggs for Onision. So guess what this emo does in response? Well, of course he starts mostly only eating egg whites, which of course, according to this, don't have much cholesterol at all, basically fixing the problem.
No, Onision, that doesn't fix the problem, as consuming egg whites still requires you to cause the suffering and death of animals, and there's no nutritional benefit to consuming eggs, even if it's only egg whites. Although egg whites are free of cholesterol, they are still the highest dietary source of methionine, which is a sulfur-containing amino acid that directly feeds cancer cells. You know how dogs can smell certain types of cancer? That's because certain types of cancer cells metabolize high amounts of methionine, which causes them to release sulfur byproducts that dogs can smell. Restricting methionine through a vegan diet is a viable way to reduce cancer risk, along with extending life expectancy. And there is no need to consume animal products to get an adequate amount of protein. I've been vegan for 5 years, and does it look like I'm protein deficient? And you brought up an interesting argument about raising animals humanely. Even though you can give animals a very high standard of living, you are still exploiting them by taking their byproducts and breeding them. The only reason they are alive is for you to use them for your own purposes, and I find that alone deeply immoral even if they're not aware that they're being exploited in such a way. And what happens when these animals live out their usefulness? Even on the best, humanely focused, free-range farms, chickens and cows are still killed once they can't make these industries any money. Do you think it's ethical to control someone's life like that and decide how they live and when they die as if you're some sort of god?
Betty the cow has gotten too old and can't produce any more milk, and some of the chickens aren't laying any more eggs. I'm just going to have to write their names down in my death note. I'm going to be the god of this new vegetarian world, and I'll only humanely kill animals that have become too old to produce dairy and eggs. And if anyone gets in my way, I'll kill them too.
So now that we've established that dairy and eggs are inhumane and have absolutely no nutritional or health benefits to humans, let's refute your last few arguments for why you continue to eat animal products.
As far as honey, guess what? Based on my research, monetizing the food that bees produce help keep the bee population higher. And if you may or may not know, Einstein once said, if bees cease to exist, we're basically all dead within 4 years. So we have to continue funding bee production. So according to Einstein, we can continue living. Do you consume any of these foods? We got blueberries, cherries, apples, cranberries, cucumbers, melons, oranges, vegans. Do you consume any of those?
So your argument is, if we don't buy commercial honey, people will stop keeping bees, and then the entire human race would die. Yeah, I think if keeping bees was necessary for the continuation of our species, we'd keep doing it regardless of whether or not there was a direct monetary incentive to do so, as I think we all like living, and not buying honey wouldn't stop commercial pollination. Commercial honey production is not the same as commercial pollination. So the basis of your argument is absolutely ridiculous and makes no sense. And according to research, honeybees are not a large contributor to pollination. Relying on them as pollinators is risky as new diseases can rapidly diminish honeybee populations, and they compete with native natural pollinators like feral bees and other animals and insects, harming the environment. Honeybees aren't even effective pollinators. Some of the foods you just mentioned, like blueberries and apples, aren't effectively pollinated by honeybees, so your argument makes no sense. You have no valid evidence that we need to buy commercial honey. All it does is exploit bees, and commercial beekeepers feed their bees corn syrup and sugar water, which has been found to contribute to colony collapse disorder, which reduces the bee population.
Well, congratulations, a lot of those are pollinated by bees, which means you are using the efforts of animals so you can consume food, which could very well be seen as an animal byproduct. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, this looks like a freaking plot hole.
Even if we could agree for the sake of argument that bees are required to pollinate a large portion of our food supply, that doesn't justify causing the suffering and death of other animals. If we absolutely had to exploit bees, that doesn't justify exploiting chickens and cows for dairy and eggs. It sounds like you're trying to make a tu quo quo fallacy and an appeal to futility to justify your immoral food choices. Reducing the amount of harm you're causing is always an option.
This Kira is overconfident and thinks he's clever. Judging by the fact that he's only killing chickens and cows that have become too old to produce eggs and milk, I can deduce that he's likely vegetarian, and since the first few killings only happened on a few family-owned farms in Washington, it should be easy to discover who this Kira really is.
However, Onision will likely never call himself a vegan because 1, even if you give up honey, you're still exploiting bees. 2, big picture, how does honey really hurt bees? Logic tells you farmers profit more from treating bees well than treating them poorly.
Veganism isn't about being perfect, it's about reducing animal exploitation and cruelty as much as practically possible, and it is definitely possible and practical for you to remove honey from your diet. I've already demonstrated why commercial honey production is unnecessary, and beekeepers are definitely not kind to their bees. They often feed their bees corn syrup, which has been found to contribute to colony collapse disorder, which reduces the bee population.
And as for eggs, yes, it's important to look into who you're getting your eggs from. That is, if you care about animal cruelty. Long story short, that is why Onision is not a vegan. Veganism makes a ton of sense, but to Onision, his diet makes a lot of sense as well.
No, Onision, your dietary choices don't make any sense. Even on the best free-range egg farms, male chicks are still murdered as they're useless to egg production, and female chicks are killed once they can't produce eggs at a rate that's profitable to the industry. If you consume animal products, you are supporting cruelty, exploitation, and murder, and it benefits you in no way. So stop being a cuck and go vegan. Well, you can still be a cuck. That really shouldn't stop you from going vegan.
what a relief. When will this poisonous product cease? This is another public service announcement. You can believe it or you can doubt it. Let us begin now with the cow. The way it gets to your plate.